وآتاكم من كل ما سألتموه وإن تعدوا نعمة الله لا تحصوها. He gave you everything you ever asked for, and if you try to count the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed you with, you couldn't even begin to count them. And all I ask of you is to pray to me. So if you do not pray by Allah, fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's something super unbelievably, no matter how much we sit and talk about it, we won't fulfill the amount of importance that it has in our deeds. That the person will be so close to paradise, so that barely any amount of space is left you in Jannah, but then you'll open your mouth and say one word, one kalima, and the distance between you and paradise after this one word will be like the distance between here and Sana'a, and the distance between Medina and Sana'a in Yemen is almost 1,000 miles. So you were right there, you were smelling the smell of paradise, you were seeing the people enjoy themselves in paradise, but you open your mouth and says one thing about this brother. And you might have not even noticed it, you might have not even paid attention to it. And all of a sudden there's 1,000 miles between you and Jannah. Think before you speak. Think before you open your mouth.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Inshallah, Salat Isha is at 8, right? So we have until 8 o'clock, inshallah. And today, inshallah, is a continuation of what the Shaykh has been doing with you from the book of Imam Nawawi, the 40 Hadith that Imam Nawawi speaks of in his book. And mashallah, clearly, Shaykh has been posting them to YouTube. I don't know how many of you actually went on YouTube to listen to some of the Shaykhs. They're good, and if you guys have Facebook, seriously, mashallah, you guys should put them on your walls, however Facebook works. Clearly, I don't know how it works, but seriously though, propagate, because this is ilm. And actually, subhanAllah, I mean, Allah knows best, but if you have the opportunity to show it to somebody and you don't, maybe it's kitman ilm, maybe it's considering, keeping sacred knowledge to yourself, which is actually a big sin. So, post it on your Facebook, send it out, inshallah. Other housekeeping issue, inshallah, is that March 22nd, is that right, Sanam? Is the Bukhari Institute seminar, inshallah. And I mean, I attended just the meeting, hearing about it, subhanAllah, and it sounds like it's going to be unbelievable. Like, you're always stuck with these lectures that are, inshallah today's not one of them, but in general, a lot of times we just hear lectures like, it's things that we've heard over and over again, fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which are important reminders and are very important, they recharge our batteries, but rarely do we hear like, beyond Islam 101, like, fiqh, like real fiqh issues, and how, in this case, the Bukhari Institute seminar is going to be on the science of hadith. Why is this hadith sahih? Why is this da'if? What are the categories of sahih? What are the categories of da'if? What are the different types of hadith? And it goes into a lot of detail, and it's super informative. And it's a part of our deen that unfortunately we don't get a lot of exposure to. So inshallah, if you're here, what date did I say it was? March 22nd, inshallah. Make sure to come to just try it out. You don't like it, leave. I guarantee you'll like it, inshallah. Make sure to come there, inshallah. So inshallah, today we're on hadith number 15. And obviously today being 15, that means last time was hadith number 14. And hadith number 14, which the Shaykh discussed with you, the Prophet ﷺ said, what did the Prophet ﷺ say? لا يحل دم امرئ مسلم إلا بإحدى ثلاث. Right? The first one is الثيب الزاني. The second one is النفس بالنفس. Right? You guys were here last week, no? Yes. And the third one is, what is it? التارك لدينه التارك لدينه المفارق للجماعة. So the Prophet ﷺ in hadith number 14 is basically the translation of which, you guys should have heard it last week, but just in case we're going to repeat it, is saying that
the Muslim blood should not be spilt and it should be protected except for one of the following three. One is the married person who has committed fornication. Number two is a soul for a soul, basically, if somebody had killed somebody, it's on purpose. And obviously there's more rules, I assume the Shaykh went over these with you. And number three is the person who leaves the deen and who leaves the congregation. And again, there's a lot of fiqh behind this issue as well, and I'm sure the Shaykh went over it with you. But the whole reason I'm bringing this up is because, subhanAllah, I mean, these scholars, and especially Imam Nawawi, the way they put their book in the order that they put things in, every hadith, like hadith 15 is basically naturally following hadith 14. It has a lot to do with it, because in hadith 14, the general topic is preserving life, is preserving society. The primary way to do that is to not kill people. I mean, that's how you have a society. You keep people alive, you protect their blood. So the Prophet ﷺ is setting these rules and saying that the Muslim blood should not be spilled. I mean, that's the general premise. It should not be spilled, and the exceptions are the following. And then he mentions those three exceptions. So he's telling us in Hadith 14 how to preserve a society. And then Hadith 15 comes, which tells us, okay, now that we have society preserved, now that we understand the sanctity of Muslim and Muslim blood and the Muslim life, how do we maintain that society? How do we maintain the structure, the skeleton of that society? I.e., how do we deal with one another? We've maintained our physical lives, now let's maintain our spiritual lives together. The way we think about one another, the way we deal with one another. And in this regard, the Prophet ﷺ says in Hadith 15, عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد إنما بعثت what's hadith نعم من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر, number one, فليقل خيرا أو ليصمت. And then he says again, صلى الله عليه وسلم, ومن كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليكرم جاره. ومن كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر, lastly, فليكرم ضيفه. جزاك الله خيرا. So the Prophet ﷺ, again, how to preserve life in hadith number 14. And this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ is telling us how to maintain, how to live with one another, how to put up with one another, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So he's saying, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, whoever, and realize how strong this premise is, whoever believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the last day. So whatever the Prophet is going to say after this, is going to be deep. It's going to be something super, super important. The Prophet says, let him say that which is good, or let him stay silent. And then the Prophet ﷺ repeats it once again. The Prophet ﷺ in this hadith could have very easily said, من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليقل خيرا أو ليصمت فليكرم جاره فليكرم ضيفه. But he repeats it each and every single time for even more tawqid, for even more emphasis. And he says, whoever believes in Allah in the last day, let him deal with his neighbor kindly. Let him take care of his neighbor. And he repeats it again. Whoever believes in Allah in the last day, let him take care of his guest. And realize how strong this premise is that Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is saying. Say Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. That whoever believes in Allah on the last day, then it's almost like he's saying that one of the signs that you actually believe in Allah in the hereafter is that you're doing these things. And all of these things are regarding our manners and the way we deal with one another. But how often do we forget how important, how cardinal of a principle this is in our religion? How huge it is, how important it is for us to maintain good manners with one another, with our parents, with Muslims, with non-Muslims, with our teachers, with our colleagues, with our co-workers. How often do we forget that the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ. Why? لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. Essentially, the Prophet is saying, Innama, verily, there's a lot of tawqid in this. Innama, verily, I was just set down for one thing. So that I can complete and I can show you what perfect manners is. Ya Rasulullah, what about tawheed? What about salah? What about zakat? The Prophet, out of everything he could have said, this is what he says, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That the reason I was sent is so that I can show you how to carry yourself, how to deal with others, how to be kind to one another, how to be considerate of others, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And he also says Ad-Deen, it's two words this hadith. Ad-Deen what? An-Nasiha, there's the rest of that hadith. We already covered that hadith actually here in Imam Nawawi's book. But there's another hadith, it's very similar. It just ends with two words. Ad-Deen al-Mu'amala. Jazakallah khair. The deen, the religion, is al-Mu'amala. Is our dealings with one another. You want to summarize the reason why we're learning what we're learning? It's so that we can have good manners. Ad-Deen al-Mu'amala. And we forget that the Prophet says this. And we forget that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, when He mentions the story of Luqman, that wise man, when He tells us this story and paints us this beautiful picture in the Quran, when Luqman is advising his son, what's the first piece of advice that he gives him? In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, speaking of Luqman, when he says to his son, what's the first piece of advice he gives him? لا تشرك بالله. How does the ayah start? وإذ قال لقمان لابنه وهو يعظه يا بني لا تشرك بالله إن الشرك لظلم عظيم. Right? The first piece of advice, and it's obvious, right? Tawheed. Don't associate any partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't associate any partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because in associating and doing shirk and associating partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is the biggest injustice anybody can do. You know, Allah gives you everything and He tells you to worship Him, and then you go say that He has partners. Huge, huge. The most important thing, right? That's what makes us Muslim. That we believe that there's no God but Allah and that there's no other partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that very same page, only a few ayahs later, what's He telling about? ولا تصعر خدك للناس ولا تمش في الأرض مرحا إن الله لا يحب كل مختال فخور. Then what? وقصد في مشيك واغضض من صوتك إن أنكر الأصوات لصوت الحمير. He tells him about Tawheed, and then a few ayahs later, the very same piece of advice on the level of Tawheed, He is telling him about his manners. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning this story for us to again emphasize to us, this is that important. To emphasize to each and every single one of us here sitting in Flint Islamic Center. In February of 2014, for Khaled, for Ammar, for Salam, for every single person, listen up. Having good manners is just as important as you saying La ilaha illallah. Because right after Luqman tells him, don't associate any partners with Allah, his advice was to be humble. To not walk with an arrogant walk. To lower his voice. Don't lift your chin, don't lift your nose, don't think you're better than people, and don't raise your voice. Because the most hated of voices is the voice of the donkey. What is this all dealing with? Manners. Manners in the very same conversation, in the very same piece of advice about Tawheed, the next thing is manners. We forget this. And we forget in Surah Al-Mu'minun, which we've all heard when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what? First ayah is أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. First characteristic, الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. Next characteristic, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِلزَّكَاةِ فَاعِلُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing for us, the believers, is describing what each and every one of us here strives to be. And the first quality of the believers that He's saying, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, verily successful are the believers, those who in their salah have khushu', have concentration, they remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they're focused in salah. Right? And what's salah? Well, salah is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. It's something huge. You've got to do it 5 times a day. And it's one of, if you had to pick from the most important 5 pillars of Islam, it's one of the most important pillars. And we know the importance of salah. And if you don't pray, be mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you don't pray, be mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you don't pray, be mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَآتَاكُم مِّن كُلِّ مَا سَأَلْتُمُوهُ وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. He gave you everything you ever asked for. And if you try to count the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed you with, you couldn't even begin to count them. And all I ask of you is to pray to me. So if you do not pray by Allah, fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's something super, super unbelievably, no matter how much we sit and talk about it, we won't fulfill the amount of importance that it has in our deen as-salah. What's the very next characteristic of al-mu'minun? قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ. The very next characteristic, Those who abstain from vain talk. When they talk, they're not just, just talking about nothing, wasting their time. Their mouth doesn't close. And this is regarding what? This is manners. This is manners. And then, subhanAllah, what's next? What's the next characteristic? وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِلزَّكَاةِ فَاعِلُونَ. And we come to zakah again. What's zakah? Just like salah, what? One of the 5 pillars of Islam. And quite frankly, if all of Muslims gave the zakah they're supposed to give, wallahi, there wouldn't be any poverty left on earth. Something so important. I don't know that we're at the level of paying zakah yet. Maybe we don't have our own income, we don't understand the fiqh of it, that's fine. But when we do, it's something unbelievably important. But between as-salah and as-zakah, what's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talking about? Manners. Manners. It's like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us one piece of bread is salah, one piece of bread is zakah, and the meat of the sandwich is manners. This is how important manners are. They're on the level of tawheed. They're on the level of believing in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we forget these things. We forget the Prophet ﷺ mentioning these ahadith to us. We forget these ayahs in the Quran. Maybe sometimes we overlook these subtleties. But let us know for sure that it is that important. And then once we kind of grasp that, it's a lot easier. It starts to become a little bit more clear. Why, in this hadith number 15, the Prophet ﷺ is using the premise which he used, which is what? مَنْ كَانَ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. Whoever believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the hereafter, then let him 1, 2, 3. Let him fulfill these manners. It starts to become a little bit more clear why it's that important. And subhanAllah, one of the beauty of hadith is the fact you got to realize the Prophet ﷺ is saying these beautiful words. He doesn't have a paper in front of him. He doesn't prepare for these things. He's going up there and saying it. And how much insight and how much foresight and how much unbelievable wisdom can be extracted from the words of the Prophet ﷺ alone is enough for us to have conviction that no doubt he was the messenger of Allah ﷺ. And the reason I'm saying this, because it's unbelievable how much foresight the Prophet ﷺ had in saying this hadith. In mentioning that whoever believes in Allah on the last day, let him say what is good or stay silent. Number 2, let him take care of his neighbor. And number 3, let him take care of his guest. These aren't 3 arbitrary things that the Prophet ﷺ picked. He was just there, he was just talking to people, ﷺ, he said, let me pick some 3 good characteristics, which they are. I could say 3 random things, pick up something from the road, do this, do that. I can say, but these aren't 3 arbitrary, good characteristics, good manners the Prophet ﷺ picked. If you look at these 3 things, they're asking of us to fulfill one of the hardest manners to fulfill, and especially in the culture that we're growing up in. These 3 things are all asking for us to step outside of our egos, to stop thinking about ourselves and to start being considerate of others, to stop serving ourselves and stroking our own egos and thinking, you know what? I don't care what Khaled thinks. I'm more concerned what Allah thinks. I'm more concerned what Majid thinks. I'm more concerned what so-and-so thinks. To stop serving myself and think about serving others. And I say this was an unbelievable foresight because if you look at the culture that we grew, and I don't care whether you're born here, whether you can, the point is we're here, we're immersed in this American culture, and I'll call myself American first and foremost, right? And no matter how good you are, no matter how much hadith you know, no matter how much Quran you read, no matter whether you're part of the ilm program, whether you come to Halaqa every Thursday or not, you, one way or another, are going to be affected by the culture you grow up in. Right? And we grow up in this culture that's so egotistical, that promotes such a level of narcissism that it's disgusting. It's nauseating. It's all about me. Right? We have songs saying, I'm the man, I'm the man, I'm the man. Just promoting yourself, promoting your ego. And look at the foresight of the Prophet ﷺ, mentioning 3 things, all one common theme: selflessness. Stop thinking about yourself. Before you speak, think about how it's going to affect your brother and sister. Think about how it's going to affect everybody else around you. Before you rest at night, make sure your neighbor is okay. And if you have guests, I don't care what your schedule is. Oh, I was going to go work out. I was going to go do this. I was planning on doing this and that. No, I have guests. I have to take care of my guests. All of that goes out the window. It's not about me anymore. It's not about me anymore. And again, how much foresight the Prophet ﷺ had in saying these things. Because wallahi, it's one of the hardest things to do, especially right now in 2014. Especially because of the popular culture that we're, again, no doubt, no matter how hard we try, are affected by it. So he ﷺ mentions number one, don't harm others with your words. Before you open your mouth, think. Right? We've heard this plenty of times since we were in, first, second grade, right? Think before you speak. Before I say this, how is it going to affect so-and-so? How is this person going to take it? And we have to develop a level of sensitivity to the point where, we can almost kind of detect, like Spider-Man had this spidey sense that when something bad was going down, he knew. And Peter Parker would always be in that part of town wherever the crime was going down, right? We got to have that kind of spidey sense, that kind of sense when we open our mouths. I know Keenan, and I know if I say this about him, or if I say this and he doesn't have to do with it, he might take offense to this thing. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud one day was picking some dates from a palm tree, right? And Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, I don't know if you've heard the story before, is a very frail man. I mean, despite the fact that he was one of the most knowledgeable companions, and his recitation of the Quran, by the way, was impeccable. Prophet said that if you want to read the Quran, dripping wet like it was just almost revealed, read it like Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. So despite that though, he was a very frail man, all right? And he had, being frail, he had chicken legs. He had very, very thin legs. Something maybe some of us can relate to, right? He had very, very skinny legs. And so he was up there picking, dates from the date palm tree. And him being so light, right, and he's not at the bottom of the tree, he's at the top of the tree, a gust of wind comes, and the companions were standing down, at the ground level, and they were watching him do this. The gust of wind comes, and he was so light, right, the wind came, it didn't even make a difference how long he was in the tree, right, it just kept on blowing, and blowing, and blowing, and it looked like there was nobody in the tree, that's how light he was. And in fact, he was wearing a garment, and it got it was so windy that his legs started showing, and they saw the legs of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, and they just kept laughing. They just kept laughing. And you know what? Quite frankly, Allah, if that was me in the tree and you guys were all down here, if you guys were laughing, I have chicken legs. That's not all. I can tell you guys that my legs are thin, okay? From the bottom. But if I was up there and you guys were all laughing at me, I would laugh. I might not take offense to it. I would tell you, I probably wouldn't. I would probably be like, that's funny, and I would maybe point out something that's wrong in you, and then we'd all laugh, because we're all, friends, we're all close, and this is how they were, the companions. And who knows, maybe there was an 85% chance that Abdullah ibn Mas'ud wasn't even offended in the first place. But what did the Prophet ﷺ say? What did the Prophet ﷺ say? Just in case that 0.1% chance or whatever small percentage of chance that Abdullah ibn Mas'ud's feelings would have been hurt because the other companions were laughing. He says, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, وَالَّذِي نَفْسِي بِيَدِهِ لَهُمَا أَثْقَلُ فِي الْمِيزَانِ مِنْ أُحُدٍ. I swear by the one who my soul is in his hands, that these legs that you're laughing at, in the scale of Allah, they are heavier than the mountain of Uhud. Just in case Abdullah ibn Mas'ud's feelings were. Just in case Abdullah ibn Mas'ud's feelings were. Think before you speak. Think before you open your mouth. Think about when Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu anhu was asking the Prophet ﷺ, when the Prophet ﷺ says that people will enter the fire just because of their tongue. And he said, oh Messenger of God, people are going to enter the fire just because of their tongue? And he said, Ya Mu'adh, ثَكَلَتْكَ أُمُّكَ. It's a saying. It doesn't really mean this insult to Sayyidina Mu'adh radiallahu anhu, but it's just to emphasize how important the point is. He's telling him, it's almost like, I wish your mother would never give birth to you. Like, what you're saying is a huge, huge, huge deal. Are the people not thrown in the fire except for their tongue? Are the people not thrown in the fire except for their tongue? Another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says that if you guard from me what is in between your cheeks and what is in between your legs, that I will promise you paradise. That I will promise you paradise. Think before you speak. Have this sense for when you open your mouth, how is this going to make so-and-so person feel? How is what I'm saying going to affect my Muslim brother and sister? And Fudayl ibn Iyad said, just to emphasize the point that this is not easy. This is not easy. And again, this just emphasizes how important it is because it's not easy. Fudayl ibn Iyad says, ما حج ولا عمرة ولا جهاد أشد من حبس اللسان. There is no Hajj, which, who has done Hajj here? Raise your hand. May Allah accept, inshallah. Well, for those, it's hard, man. Even as a young person, even with all your energy, it's difficult. But he's saying, La Hajj, no Hajj, no Umrah, not even jihad, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is more difficult than holding your tongue. None of these are more difficult than holding your tongue. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, I mentioned 2 hadith, and wallahi, these hadith are so scary. And wallahi, I heard them a couple days ago for the first time. Just immediate goosebumps, subhanAllah. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says regarding the tongue, لا يستقيم العبد حتى يستقيم قلبه ولا يستقيم قلبه حتى يستقيم لسانه. That the abd, the servant of Allah, his affairs will never be good, will never be right, he will never be on the straight path, so to speak, until his heart is right. And his heart will never be right until his tongue is correct. And he sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, إِنَّ الرَّجُلِ لَيَدْنُو مِنَ الْجَنَّةِ حَتَّى لَا يَكُونَ بَيْنَهُ وَبَيْنَهَا إِلَّا ذِرَاعٌ فَيَتَكَلَّمُ بِكَلِمَةٍ فَيَتَبَاعَدْ مِنْهَا أَبْعَدُ مِنْ صَنْعَاءٍ. The person will be so close to paradise, so that barely any amount of space is left you in Jannah. But then you'll open your mouth and say one word, one bikalima, and the distance between you and paradise after this one word will be like the distance between here and Sana'a, and the distance between Medina and Sana'a in Yemen is almost 1,000 miles. So you were right there. You were smelling the smell of paradise. You were seeing the people enjoy themselves in paradise, but you open your mouth and says one thing about this brother. And you might have not even noticed it. You might have not even paid attention to it. And all of a sudden there's 1,000 miles between you and Jannah. Think before you speak. Think before you open your mouth. Number one. And as far as practical points are concerned, the number one thing, and honestly one of the most underestimated things, don't backbite. Oh, but what I'm saying about this brother is true. What's the definition of backbiting? Let's just do that and we'll move on to the next point. What's the definition of backbiting? What's that? MashaAllah. Which means what?
Saying something about someone which they hate.
Which they don't like. Saying something about your brother or your sister which they dislike. Does any part of that have anything to do with truth? Is truth brought up in any of that? No, right? And that's the exact definition, mashallah. I thought we might be guessing a little bit, but jazakallah khair, we got it right away. Right? But how often do we hear, or maybe we're guilty of it sometimes? Oh, I said this about so-and-so, right? But, why you back? Well, it's true, it's okay, it's true. That's not the definition. The definition of backbiting. It doesn't matter whether it's true, whether it's false. If I say something about somebody, and he doesn't like it, if I say, so-and-so person can bench 225 8 times, and I know so-and-so person does not like that, for example, right? That's backbiting. It doesn't sound that bad, but I know this brother doesn't like me saying, you can, don't worry for that brother. I've seen you do it, mashallah. I'm not going to put you on blast here. We know who the brother is. Alright? But seriously, that's backbiting, guys. That's backbiting, sisters. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. If you say something about your sister that she does not like, whether it's true or not, whether it's insulting or not, you think if they wouldn't like it, then that's backbiting. So hold your tongues and be careful. And be careful lest we be one of those people who, we come in the Jannah, we're this close. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, remember that time you said something about this person? And that puts you back 1,000 miles away from Jannah. And we seek refuge from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be from amongst these people. Say Ameen. Number 2, inshallah, is to take care of the neighbor, right? Whoever believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, let him, sisters, take care of his or her neighbor. And the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said to his companions, مَا زَالَ جِبْرِيلٌ يُوصِينِي بِالْجَارِ حَتَّى ظَنَنْتُ أَنَّهُ سِيُوَرِّثُ. Jibreel kept on telling me about how important it is to take care of your neighbor, that I thought at some point he is going to tell me that they are entitled to some of my inheritance. It's that important. That's how much nasiha Jibreel and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent through Jibreel to tell the Prophet of how important it is to take care of your neighbor. And again, we'll mention one hadith. It's a very, very scary hadith regarding our neighbors. The Prophet says, كم من جار متعلق بجاره يوم القيامة فيقول هذا أغلق بابه دوني فمنع من معروفه. How many neighbors on the Day of Judgment will come clinging and almost hanging off of their neighbors, will come hanging off of you, will come trailing behind you, and they will say, Ya Allah, this person was my neighbor, but he closed his door to me, and so I was not able to get anything from his good. So he closed his door to me, so I never knew anything about Islam. So he closed his door to me, so I never knew anything about this man that I kept on hearing about on the news and in these books by the name of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He closed his door to me, so all I knew of Islam was terrorism and swords and Al-Qaeda and Taliban and all this garbage that I hear from other people. He closed his door to me so that I never heard the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I never heard the words of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. This is the Prophet saying this. On the Day of Judgment, you're going to come and you're going to be accountable for your neighbors. Allah will ask you, what did you do? Do we even know our neighbors' names? Do we even know our neighbors' names? And I'll call myself out. The only reason I know my neighbor's name is because I make too much noise, and one time he came and knocked on my door telling me I was making too much noise. Do we even know our neighbors' names? Do we even deal with our neighbors? And how often do we implement the hadith of the Prophet said, who says, when you cook something, put a little bit more water in it. Make it a little bit extra on what you have that you're making extra. Give it to your neighbor. Give it to your neighbor. And in fact, in the madhab of Al-Hanabila and Ahmad bin Hanbal's madhab, he says that if your neighbor is putting a piece of wood on his house and he asks for help, it's a requirement on you to help your neighbor. It's a requirement on you to help your neighbor. And Imam Shamsuddin al-Dhahabi, watch out. You know Shamsuddin al-Dhahabi, right? Imagine his great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. Inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us all, knowledgeable. Really though, he's from Turkmenistan and he's one of the greatest muhaddis. Doesn't mean anything, right? Fatima, the daughter of the Prophet came to the Prophet and he said, don't go on the Day of Judgment with your relationship to me. Come with your actions. Anyways, the point is, in his book, Al-Kaba'ir, the major sins, right? We know that he mentions, and I think we've discussed this before, right? He mentions the major sins, which are, let's name some of them. What? Shirk, obviously, yes. Keep going.
Disobeying your parents.
What is it?
Disobeying
your parents. Fornication, sisters. Killing somebody. Alcohol. The context in which we mentioned, well, I think it was a khutbah Jummah or something. I don't expect you guys to remember anything I said. One time, it was mentioned in khutbah Jummah that actually despair in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one of the major sins. Anyways, among these sins is guess what? I'm sorry to break it to you, but it's guess what? The subject wrong. What's the subject wrong? Being bad to your neighbors, harming your neighbors is one of the major sins. It's on the level of drinking alcohol, is on the level of fornication, is on the level of shirk. I'm not saying that if you do it, might as well. I mean, there's a major sin. I did one, no. It's to emphasize how big of a deal it is. It's that big of a deal. It's on the level of these sins. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us. So practical pieces of advice. At least get to know your neighbor's name. Number 2, implement the hadith of Prophet. Bring some brownies over. Bring some cookies on Eid or whatever. I know the girls group used to, do they still do that? Where they got the chocolate covered pretzels and stuff? I did that once. My neighbor still hates me. I'm trying though. Right? Make an effort. Go over to your neighbors. I mean, I live in an apartment complex. It doesn't matter. Go next door. Walk across the street. Give them some chocolate. Give them some whatever. Introduce yourself. Say, we're your neighbors next door, so on and so forth. If you need anything. I know something that some brothers do, mashallah, which I think is amazing, right? Go shovel your neighbor's snow. You know they're old. They don't have children, right? Go shovel their driveway. I mean, take care of your neighbors. It's one of the major sins to harm your neighbors and to not take care of your neighbors. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from amongst those who, inshallah, and I'm going to make a pledge to do this inshallah too, to get to know our neighbors, to deal with them with good manners, and to at the very least, not harm them, and put up with their harm, right? Stay patient with them. If they're making noise, it's okay. Stay patient. Actually, a man came to the Prophet ﷺ one time, Adam, and he complained about his neighbor. The Prophet said, be patient. Because death will separate you guys. Basically, you can't do anything. He's your neighbor, you're stuck with him until you die. You gotta put up with him. And Allah, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you reward for your patience, inshallah. Number 3, the Prophet ﷺ said, take care of مَنْ كَانَ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. To do what? Number 3? To take care of their فَلْيُكْرِمْ sisters, their life. We have another session in the sisters' Halaqa, mashallah. Number 3 is, whoever believes in Allah on the last day, to take care of their guests. Right? And what better example do we have than al-muhajirun wal-ansar, right? وَيُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةٌ. And again, unfortunately we don't have that much time left, so we'll just mention it and we'll leave it there. The point is, common theme in all of these 3 things that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned is one thing. Is manners, and in particular, selflessness. Thinking about others. Being considerate of others. But there's still one huge question that we didn't answer. Is why? Why is this so important? Why is this so important? Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warn the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the best of mankind, who was aided by wahy, that if he didn't have good manners, the people wouldn't listen to him? وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَظًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. If you were harsh, if you didn't have good manners, nobody would listen to you. Everybody would turn away from you. Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put it on the level of tawheed? Why is it so important? Why is it that whenever someone asks the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam for comprehensive advice, Ya Rasulullah, almost always without fail, what would his advice be? It would be regarding manners. لا تغضب خالق الناس بخلق حسن. His last advice to, who was the companion who went to Yemen? Was ambassador to Yemen? Mu'az bin Jabal, jazakallah khairan, right? His last piece of advice before he went, خالق الناس بخلق حسن. And almost every time somebody would say, advise me, he would mention something to do with manners. Case in point, لا تغضب. And the man wasn't even satisfied. Okay, لا تغضب, fine. What? Tell me about something. لا تغضب. Ya Rasulullah, advise me. Something comprehensive. لا تغضب. Do not get angry, do not get angry, do not get angry. Why is there such an emphasis on this? Why is there such an emphasis on this? Why is it that the first description of Ibad al-Rahman is what? وَعِبَادُ الرَّحْمَنِ الَّذِينَ يَمْشُونَ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ هَوْنًا وَإِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا. وَعِبَادُ الرَّحْمَنِ, the servants, the slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the first characteristic, those who walk humbly. The second characteristic, those who, when people who don't know what they're talking about, when people are belligerent and they say things that are incorrect, they say, you know what? Peace. You know, it's okay. They're patient and they hold their tongue. The first qualities, the first characteristics are manners. Why is it on such a level? And we'll conclude with this, inshallah. There are 2 main reasons. I'll tell you why. Number one, because good manners is the ultimate manifestation of Tawheed. The whole reason behind us believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and listening to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is so that it can be inculcated in us, so that it can flow in our veins, so that our heart can be a sponge, and that every time we're squeezed, the things that come out are only beautiful manners because of our belief in the oneness of God and that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is His messenger. Just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, صِبْغَةَ اللَّهِ وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ مِنَ اللَّهِ صِبْغَةً. What is صِبْغَة? What is صِبْغَة? And if I say صَبَغْتُ شَعْرِي, what does that mean? I dyed my hair. What's the big deal about dye? What if I just painted my hair? What's the difference between dyeing and painting something? When you dye something, is permanent. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, this is the dye of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there is no more perfect dye than the dye of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It doesn't fade, no matter how many times you wash it. The manifestation, the colors that we show other people, those are our manners. It's the manifestation of our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those are our manners. That's how we present ourselves. That's how we present our tawheed. La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah.